And I'm just going to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about how we can enhance the contact center using middleware applications. Within that, I'm also going to touch on a bit about our approach, the approach that Britannic takes when we're working with our clients to help align the technologies and build a plan, because the key thing is there's a huge amount that you can do. If you just dropped it in my experience, if it's dropped into the contact center, the change is just colossal and it becomes a huge business risk. So it's all about managing change, managing that risk, and ensuring that when we do deploy, it's done in a controlled, calculated, measured way that actually adds value back to the business and hopefully retains the clients and hopefully grows the revenues as well. So we just talk about a few of the technologies around that. I think we all agree there is an awful lot of technology out there. Many things, lots of words banded around, some things mean the same things, lots of confusion, and potentially, you've got head of contact centers hearing and thinking they've got to be doing things. You've got IT trying to embrace that. You've got the board having their views on different technologies. But the bottom line is how can we start to pick out what's the best technology that's going to work with our clients. Now, some of the things that we're seeing, the wide range of technologies we're seeing out there, the elements of cloud. Cloud's a great thing, from great storm clouds to technology. Anyone consuming technology via the cloud at the moment? So is that voice or?
Emails.
Emails, okay, so Office 365?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We have our Exchange hosted up in Edinburgh.
Okay, fantastic, okay. So the cloud is this great thing where it can mean many different things. If we look at the different definitions, ultimately, cloud, if we define it from the perspective of today's talk, is essentially infrastructure, applications you're consuming that are typically based off-premise with a service provider and probably consuming it on an operational cost, on an OPEX type basis, from a high level. We're seeing a huge driver in that because ultimately it gives flexibility where you can put your contact center, where you can put your agents, where your agents can consume the applications they need to perform it. And if you start thinking about providing a high available business unit, i.e. the contact center, actually you don't want to be shackled to just getting into your building. If you've got a snow day or people can't get in because the rails are buckled or the butterfly was on none of that thing, there was a butterfly on the track. But if you've got the wrong type of butterfly on the track, you've still got to deliver the service, you've still got to service your clients, because your clients for the world of consumerism are consuming 24/7 and you have to be aligned to that. So cloud is a great way of underpinning that business risk and feeding business continuity and that strategy into your deployment. Multimedia, emails, voicemails, web chat, which we'll dig into, social media, number of different elements. Anyone using voice recording at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay, and using it for appraising staff as well?
Training, yeah.
Training,
Yeah.
okay.
Mainly security.
Security, so compliance elements.
Well, we're in health, so if you get into it, the operator said this, I said that, we use it for that.
Yeah.
Self-preservation.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Anyone doing CTI? Anyone know anything about CTI or SIT? So using deploying CTI?
Yes, we've got CTI between our IVRs,
Okay.
which are kind of pseudo cloud hosted, and then to our agent desktops.
Okay. Fair. So those last two, CTI and SIT, we call them enabling technologies because they're actually really quick wins and they can enable you to have a huge amount of flexibility in your infrastructure, in principle. So if we look at CTI, so the principle is a phone rings and an application pops up on your screen, and what you're then able to do, very crudely, is control the telephone call via an application on the screen. Now, what we can do is we can then build that up further and we can say, right, so if I've got a call coming in, I can recognize that number, let me interrogate the database. Once I've interrogated the database, pop up the client's database record in CRM or whatever application you're using to enable that agent, that call advisor, to actually have some information about that call before they arrive. And that's really powerful. We can take it a stage further than that, or we can actually start looking at it and say, okay, if a call's coming in on the service desk, number, if I can identify the caller's number, let me get that number, let me look at the database, see if there's any open tickets relating to that number. If there is an open ticket relating to that number, who's dealing with it? And then looking at the phone system and the contact centre, is that person available? Yes or no? If they're not available, what's the best skilled, similar skilled person I can route that call to? So we can start doing some really clever things with CTI based on, if you think about the amount of money that's spent on engineering business processes with introduction of SAP and introduction of CRM applications, the question is, how often do you align your voice experience to your business processes that have gone through very complex re-engineering? And what CTI does is essentially bring the world of the database and the world of the phone together on an inbound side. On an outbound side, it's very easy from the point of view if there's a number on an application. So you may say, if there's a number here, I can click that number with my mouse and I can dial that person. Yeah. So from a database, you could be in the databases. We use it ourselves. We use Dynamics. And I can see a client's number, I can click on a button on the screen and it dials that number. Yeah, so it's really easy. And it's all about making it easy for people to interact with your systems, because if you think about the experience, I remember when I graduated, I was on an IT help desk, so calls were coming in and I was trying to find out the person's name and they were calling up because there's a problem with the software, so they were a little bit animated, and it took a bit of time for handling and processing that call. So actually, if we could simplify that experience and make it easier for the agent or the call handler, actually, how would that improve the way they introduce themselves? And if a customer is calling who's slightly upset, actually, if the call advisor's got their attention and able to focus on the call and build a quick rapport, that's actually going to make it much, much easier. Okay. So what we've got is an application called NetConnect. NetConnect is a middleware application, so I'll define middleware. You've got your telephone system, you've got your database, and it will sit between the two. This came out of I touched on our ability with our software developers to integrate. Now what this does, this can integrate to up to 65 different types of CRM applications and multiple phone systems. It can also integrate with Link. So if you're now in a position where you've got different types of databases, so maybe from an outsourced perspective, you may have different databases you're working to with your clients, you may have different contact centers across your organization dealing with different databases. What you're able to do is have one very clean layer that you can put in place here between your phone system and your databases to manage that screen popping. So again, from a user perspective, it's simple, it's unified. Behind the scenes, okay, there's lots of different things going on, but our middleware acts as almost a buffer on the shock absorber. Yeah, so it can just absorb and make it nice and easy. Many benefits to it, I'm going to go through them. Key thing is it can speed up your delivery time. And I work with a lot of my customers on the contact center to look at ways that we can actually, we say, right, how long is it taking you to service your calls? And from those calls, actually, what percentage of those calls are repetitive? So maybe we could be looking at putting those towards some form of self-service, perhaps. Also looking at the way that I can create time. How can I create time in that contact center to enable the agents to have, be able to service that call? It's not first call, it's not about resolving that first call, it's about that customer being satisfied after that first call. So it's about creating time. CTI is a great enabler for that. The other element is SIP trunking. Now, anyone using SIP trunks at the moment? Do you know what SIP trunks are? Yeah, okay. So what we've done here is, we've been doing SIP trunking, we've got our own platform, we've had it for a good few years. We've taken this a stage further now. So what we're doing with Trailfinders, a large multi-site contact center of ours, what we're actually doing here is they've got 10,000 premium numbers, premium names, named contacts. And what we want to do is we want to make sure when those calls come in, that those calls are captured and routed to the best person who can handle that, necessarily regardless of site. So what we've actually done is we've introduced routing at the carrier level here, where we can identify that call and we can then route that call based on a condition at the carrier SIP level. We then present that call into the system, where we then hook into the skill-based routing and all those other experiences around it. So we can actually, almost like a triage, as soon as that call's arriving, we're identifying it, we're putting an action against that to ensure that experience is far better. Yeah? So it adds another layer to how you're servicing your clients. Middleware apps are really, really important, and what you've got to think about is, okay, if I've got at our service layer, this is a Britannic platform, the Britannic Cloud solution. So we've got lots of different applications within our service layer. So we can put different services, applications, tools that you need to help manage. So BizView could be dropping into there, you could be looking at your voice recording, the platform. So we can turn on each of these different applications as and when you need to within the business. So this is really, really key from a deployment perspective, because what we'd look at is within the infrastructure, that's where we put the 5 nines, that's where we make you guys available. That's the belt and braces, that's the fork, that's your solid foundations. The service level, above it here, this is where you can consume the applications. And this is the power that I work with customers. We work on a 3-strand approach. We work to stabilize our customers, deal with the risk, get things on an even keel. We work to standardize, and next level we work to optimize. And optimize, what we're then doing is we're then very targeted sniper approach delivery of applications to help our customers align, basically exploit specific opportunities or prevent specific risks. So you can turn on applications at a very, very specific level. And our service level enables us to do that. The connectivity, this is essentially how we connect. So we've got this nice solid platform here. The connectivity then dictates how we can consume that. And we've got customers who are now saying, well actually, I've got to, there's fire alarms going on in my building, I've still got a service, I've still got to deal with transactions. How can I do that? So actually we're looking at saying, well, let's take the contact center and put it on a mobile device, on a tablet, so when I'm and connect via 4G, so when I'm outside the building, because the fire alarm's gone off, I'm still able to carry on performing the transaction of our customers. Yeah? So the connectivity is an important layer, because this is almost your connections into your infrastructure. Voice recording. So I'm just going to touch on lots of voice recording. I think, in my view, the biggest area that you can get the greatest productivity return from is around the quality management. So this is taking a call, looking at the call, and then using it to assess and review competencies against. The returns that I've found, the amount of time I've managed to create my customers by looking at saying, in an ideal world, if I could find a way of reducing the amount of time an advisor spends on the phone or on an inquiry, but still achieve the same levels of satisfaction and the same levels of customer resolution, if I can shrink that time down, then how much actual extra capacity have I created within the contact center? And the quality management is a really, really powerful tool to help that. And we're happy to share with you some return on investments that I've worked on with that one. In addition to that, don't ignore screen capture, because trail finders use this. It's really, really useful, because if you think about it, if someone's taking an inquiry and they're putting information over the phone, so on their database, if they're having to route around the system, because perhaps the flow of tabbing between fields doesn't work as cleanly, maybe they're going into different databases to get information. If you're getting those really difficult pauses on the call because the agent is trying to find some information, screen capture helps you analyze that and look at that, and look at the way that your agents are interfacing with the systems while they're servicing their customers. And again, that can be a great way of improving and making it easy for the agents, empowering your agents. Okay, so we talk a bit about the customer interactive lifecycle, and this is really the stages that we go through. So I'm going to just rattle through them very, very quickly, and happy to discuss afterwards. But ask yourself the question, this is what we ask, how are your customers contacting you today? So go back to Maurice's piece about customer experience and your customers. How are your customers contacting with you? Some of the things to think about is saying, well, voice calls, are they happy with the callback? Do they don't want to be on the queue? Think about click to call on your website. Think about your social media. Think about the BizView piece. Are you really clear on how your customers want to contact you, or are you telling them how they're going to contact with you? The next is, how do your customers, how do you identify your customers? So, this could be, the prime one being, you've got someone coming in, are they a top customer, premium customer, are they a new business customer, is it a complaint inquiry? Catch that and use the right skill, use the agents. How are you dealing with that? Maybe, what happens if we could get that customer number and grab that and interrogate the database? Would that help us? Would that inform the agent perhaps as to what's going on with that call before that call's actually presented to them? Self-service is a tricky one, right? You know, sometimes people don't want to go to machines, they don't want to talk to machines. I pay my water bill via the phone. Yeah, I don't speak to anybody. I can put my details in. You know what? It's so easy. I can call any time. I can be doing something else while I'm going through it. I don't have to spend ages in the queue. That's a really easy thing for me, and it makes it. You know, I'm happy to do that. Some services, clearly, I don't want to go through a self-service on how to fix my broadband. Yeah, because that's really frustrating. I need help and I need it now. But don't underestimate self-service for speeding up and creating time. Someone's been waiting for 20 seconds. What happens? Do you know how long your customers wait to speak to somebody? You know, we like to think it's not a lot, but actually, truly, how long do they wait? And then think about that's just voice. Then what happens if we took that to web chat? What about email? What's the expectation with an email? Most people's expectations, typically, I send an email. Oh, someone should be looking at that now. But actually, you may find I'm seeing that the KPIs for turning back emails are significantly longer than voice calls, because voice calls are instant, but emails take longer. So why, you know, is that satisfactory? Have you measured your customers? Have you asked them what they expect for return on an email? And again, then starting to think about what happens if people are waiting for inquiries and responses. How are you then managing that? How are you setting the expectation? Is my experience of being on the phone to order my broadband 20 minutes and having the line dropped off? Maybe if they'd said to me early enough that actually, you know what, we're really busy and the centre's closing at 8 o'clock, go and check the website out, I may have not stuck there 20 minutes and missed the kids going to bed. Yeah? But it's, you know, how do you treat your customers? If you get busy, and ultimately you want to be busy, right? Because that's the purpose of the contact centre. How are you routing your calls? You know, that's really, really important. Again, skill-based routing really powerful, but let's extend that out, not just for voice, but let's look at emails, let's look at web chats. And the data, you know, and again, I'm just whistling through these. It's how much information is held within your CRM? And are you truly giving your agents that information to handle that call? Are you setting your agents up to perhaps not achieve the levels of customer satisfaction you'd expect? Because actually, you're not making this information available to them, or it's tricky for them to get that information available. How easy would it be for an agent, as a call came in, just to pop that information on the screen if it was there? Or even if there was duplicates, at least give them a narrow pick list to take that call. Think about new starters. How does a new starter feel taking a call and then having all this other in-house systems they've got to manage? If you could simplify that, what impact would that have? And the other point here, the last thing is, why are people calling you? Why are your customers calling you? And the other question at the end is, have you answered their question? I was doing a discovery session in a contact centre, and the call came in and it was the wrong number. And the agent said, yeah, it's not the wrong number. First call resolution, tick. How was that customer? How did that person feel? They weren't given a name, they weren't given a number, they weren't offered to be transferred to the other department. How often do you hear, I can't transfer you to that department? Yeah? How does that make you feel? The agent staff, cool, tick, first call resolution, job done. The customer, what's their experience? What happens if it's someone cancelling a service? You know, and it could end up to the point of you breach of contracts, etc. How are you treating that? And there's, you know, one website company that I've heard of where someone's trying to cancel a service, and they call through to the contact centre and they said, oh no, can't take that, I can't transfer you through. Eventually you're given another number, typically it's a premium rate number, you call that, you spend ages on the phone, you try and email them, you know, and this experience was going on, and it got to the point that the person received a letter from a debt collection agency, even though he's tried to cancel the service. So anyway, cleared a load of time, sat on the phone on this, 35 minutes on the phone, you know, and then eventually dropped an email in saying, right, I am now setting up a Twitter account, I'm going to share my experience. Yeah, how quickly do you think the call was answered from that point? It was answered very quickly. Yeah, it may have been coincidence, but it was answered very quickly and the situation was dealt with. That was not a good customer experience, because you know what, that person will share that story, as they've done to me. I won't mention the client, the end user name, but the net result of that, you wouldn't go near that company, because sometimes you want to choose your suppliers, and if they make it difficult to leave, then you won't come back. And the last thing here, supervisors. So, do your supervisors have enough management information to do their job? Are they developing your staff? Are they bringing your staff on? If you did enable them to do that, truly enable them to do that, what would be the impact for your experience within the contact centre? implementing change is really, really important, yeah, because things are changing a lot. But there's different things you can do. Maybe looking at how you schedule staff in your contact center. I've got one client whose staff actually bid and apply when they can work, as opposed to the other way, when they're told when they're going to work. That's the culture of the organisation. How do you manage that when you're trying to staff your contact centre, which actually is a sales contact centre as well? So there's a direct revenue target assigned to that. So just to conclude, last couple of seconds here, there's a lot of questions out there, and that's really, really important. And we take the time to go and try and understand what's going on and do the discovery, sit within the contact centre. These are some of the questions that we ask as part of our discovery process. And from that, what we then start to do is build out a strategy and build out a plan for you, and look at going through the 3 phases that we were talking about: stabilise, standardise, and optimise. The key thing is, if you'll see from the Avaya piece, there's a huge amount of power that you can deliver to your customer experience. And the reality is, how many people invested in the contact centre? Because you bought agent licenses and everything else. Yeah, it's a big investment. Yeah. How much does it cost to staff your contact centres? People is the biggest cost in the business, and probably quite, one of the most difficult to manage. How important? What direct impact do those 2 costs have on the company's top line profitability? And the reality is, it's changing. Morris showing that ideas it's changing. The BizView stuff is showing it's changing. And what we're looking at, here is how are you going to plan your change within that contact centre.